Kubor ka Batesi TV. Lawan Rashapi da ka Orange Nissan Looms Hopo near Fire Brigade Shillong. Ringkat bat ka net foodish. Ordar mapi. Minwan ra mangi hakerdog ying jongpi.
Daga jingay jingbet jong ka Ministry of Tribal Affairs ka Sorkar Pedeng, Shen ka Sorkar Jilla kan sa Thaw ya ka Task Force, ya ka ban sa khali da Menteri Rangba jong ka Jilla u Konrad Konggal Sangma, ha ka baki dikhot kin kentup ya u Menteri jong ka Tanat Puli Puthi, bat katto kat nengut ki Officer Rangba na ka Tanat Puli Puthi, ban pej baka jingshna no ya ki Eklavya Model Residential School, hapo ka ni ka Jilla Meghalaya. Habis keren bat kilat pathai khubor, Menteri Rangba ke Jilla Konrad Sangma ulaong. Baka Ministry of Tribal Affairs kala shimru ya karai ban the ya ki Pyntrei sha ki pras pa lai phuhun reu tali ki snong nong kendong ki badan hapo kari India baro kawai khnang ban kentiu ya ka yo ka kot ka jongki.
Last week I made a visit to Delhi, and during my visit I had met a large number of ministers from the Government of India and officials to take up a large number of issues pertaining to the development of the state. Some of the more important meetings were with the Tribal Affairs Department, and an important issue there which we had discussed, which the Honorable Education Minister has already given you details, but I'll just add to it that there was a big concern about the Emrs schools, the fact that the overall progress of the work in these schools is not at the pace as we would want it to be. So therefore, after discussing with the Tribal Affairs Minister, we are setting up a task force which will be headed by myself as a chairperson, the Chief Minister, and there will be members from, obviously, the Education Minister and the Education Department will be there, and the members from WebCOS, which is one of the implementing agencies, and the MIDC, which is the Manipur Industrial Development Corporation, and officials from the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. And the objective of this task force will be to ensure that all the different issues concerning land and other aspects which are leading to the slowdown of the overall implementation of the scheme will be taken up by this task force. Apart from that, the Tribal Affairs Minister has informed us that the Government of India, the Tribal Affairs Ministry, has decided to take up a large number of tribal villages for overall development purpose in different tribal states of the country. They have identified 836 villages, plus minus 10. I don't remember exactly 836 or 846, but approximately 830 plus villages have been identified in Meghalaya, which will now be taken up in the next 5 years for overall development and gap funding in whatever areas that are required. The objective being to make these villages self-sufficient in one way, make these villages overall have the facilities that they require. So the Ministry of Tribal Affairs will actually fund these villages, and as I said, it will be done in a 5-year plan. And for this also, we have organized a meeting which is going to take place next week, along with the Joint Secretary of the concerned project, where these villages will be taken up. And as I said, this list of villages have already been finalized, and will be starting the implementation of these development projects in these villages funded by Ministry of Tribal Affairs in the next few months to come. When these schools were initially started, there was no particular financial allocation for these schools to be completed. So therefore, when we took over in 2018, we found some of the schools at 20% completion, 30% completion, 60% completion, one or two with 80% completion, and there being no funds to actually complete the rest of the schools. So, and after that, of course, with all the financial pressure with COVID and everything, we had a difficult time to move forward. But then we took a decision that since some investment has been made, we will complete the schools. So therefore, the projects in the schools which had a substantial amount that had been invested already and substantial work been done already, the government had decided that we're going to complete those schools, and accordingly, works in those schools have started. And in some areas where the work was very less, or in some areas which there was no work at all, we did not move forward in those areas. So we will ensure that these schools also are completed. We may tone down the school in terms of the scope. So it may be the numbers might go down, or maybe the residential aspect might not be there in some areas because of the fact that we'll be getting these Eklavya residential model schools, 40 plus of them. So therefore, keeping all those factors in mind, seeing the financial implication and also seeing the overall long-term sustainability of these schools in terms of salaries for the teachers and all these aspects, we will move forward, but we will balance all these aspects out and take whatever the best decision with the highest educational impact and minimize the economic impact in terms of the construction cost and the running expenditure that we might have to give. So, in a nutshell, we are going to move forward. We are going to complete these schools, those who have reached certain level, so about 40, 50%, 60%, wherever we're seeing the buildings completed, we will finish those schools, and we have already in fact worked out a mechanism on how we're going to run it also. So it will be done. About 836 villages. No, Meghalaya. 836 villages in Meghalaya in the next 5 years. I will have more details about it after I take a review meeting next week on which district, how many villages, what is the kind of intervention that's going to be there. But even if you were to see an intervention of, say, about 50 lakhs in one village, so you can imagine it's a large amount that will be invested in these villages. And the idea is very simple, is to be a kind of a gap funding for roads, maybe for electricity, maybe for water connection, wherever that little more fund is required to make that village more sustainable, or livelihood programs. So these kind of interventions will be done. So there will not be one set program that will be there. I'm sure that the state government will play a crucial role in ensuring that which village should get what kind of intervention will be decided. But I'll get a better and clearer picture next week. But this information was given to me last week when I met the Tribal Affairs Minister, that 836 villages have been identified in Meghalaya. So plus minus 10, I've already said that. So approximately 800 plus villages. So the Tribal Affairs Ministry had asked and floated an expression of interest about almost a year and a half back, asking different PSUs to apply, and different PSUs applied. Sadly, there was no PSU from Meghalaya that applied for it. At that point in time, the Tribal Affairs Ministry, in the first lot, there was nobody. So Webcost was the only one, and they were the lowest bidder. And therefore, in terms of the agency charge, was very less. I think they charged 2.5%, 3% or something like that. I can't remember. But based on that, Webcost was given the initial 12 or 15 schools that we got in the second batch. In this third batch of about 25 schools, again, when the expression of interest was floated, none of the public sector undertakings from Meghalaya again did not participate in that. So in that time also, the Tribal Affairs Minister looked at the list and said that rather than giving it to another agency which is like from Bombay or Delhi, since there is no agency from Meghalaya who's applied for it, let us at least give it to somebody who's from Northeast, so at least it will be a regional PSU. And that is when they looked at the numbers, and in the numbers obviously also they looked at the names. Again, there was nobody from Meghalaya, but then the MIDC means the Manipur Industrial Development Corporation was the lowest bidder at about 2 or 2.5%. And based on that selection process, the Government of India had allotted the work to MIDC. Now, let me also stress on this, that if several applications have gone to Minister and Department asking them that if this can be further given back to us. But obviously, to do that, a complete new process will have to be done, which could be time-consuming, which could be legally complicated, and therefore, even after our trials, to try and get it back to some of the PSUs, though our PSUs should have been proactive and applied for it, which they did not. We still try to fight, but as I said, it would lead to a lot of legal complications and maybe delay the project or maybe completely derail them. So that's the history of this, and that's why today these agencies are implementing it. But in the interest of ensuring that it is done properly, we have decided, along with the Ministry of MOTA, that is the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, to form a task force which will be headed by me that will monitor this on a school-to-school basis and ensure that everything moves smoothly. Apart from that, again, regarding the EMRS, the Honorable Education Minister has already informed that there was a concern whether for the recruitment of the teachers, since it's a central sponsored project, whether the state policy or the national policy will apply. And during the course of our meeting, it was clarified to us that the state reservation policy will be applicable for the recruitment in these particular schools.
Menteri rang ba jong ke jela Konrad Sangma lembat ke kenhon menteri ki balalai Delhi dang hakini ki khendiat sngi kila yo lat ban ya kendo ya menteri ka Sorkar Padang ubapet ya ka Ministry of Roads, Transports and Highways na ka benta ban ya kren halor ka jingbha pisa ban yoshna khambun ki surok ba ne ki National Highway hapo kani ka jela Meghalaya. Habaya keren bat kilat pathai khubor Menteri Rangba ke Jelau Konrad Sangma ulia thoru ba ulayo lat ban IT ya ke dorkhas ha Menteri ubapet ya kene katanat traikam jong ke Sorkar Padang khnang ban pensngo halor ke jingmang pisa na ke Central Road Fund ban shnai ke surok ba ha kene ke Jella.
We also had a meeting with the National Highway and the Honorable Minister of Road and Surface Transport. And we have submitted additional projects for CRF, that is Central Road Fund. And at the same time, we have asked for additional funds to take up more projects on national highways. On both the fronts, we have got a very positive response from the Government of India. And we're hopeful that we will get more additional funds for additional projects in this financial year under the National Highway. As well as under CRF, with some intervention from Finance Department of the state and the Finance Department from the center. We are hopeful that certain more projects will be there under CRF also. We also had a meeting with the Jal Shakti Minister. So projects regarding Jal Jeevan mission, as well as the minor irrigation projects were also taken up. Some old pending dues to the state, amounting to approximately about 70-80 crores, was taken up, and the government has agreed to release those funds immediately to us. And at the same time, we have also asked for additional 70 projects to be taken up under the minor irrigation, and Government of India is positively considering those projects also.